Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Ulmer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 2025 Goat Camp series. I'm not sure if anyone else knows this, but it's Mountain Goat March. I declared it a federal holiday, both in the US and Canada, because we're going to make Alaska one of our provinces here at some point, right?
Easy.
I think that's fair. I don't think it's a real thing, but I thought it sounded cool, so I just started using Mountain Goat March. I hope that's okay. I didn't breach any trademarks with the Goat Alliance or anything, did I?
We'll pass a resolution at the next board meeting because I like your idea.
Perfect. All right. Well, we are super excited about this series, and we've been talking about it amongst ourselves now for a while, and I look forward to it all year. It was a special year for me last year. I was able to harvest my first goat, and my buddy Ed told me when we started up the mountain that your life will be different after this, and your appreciation and addiction to mountain goats will be something you'll never ever shake. And he was dead right. I'm absolutely hooked on mountain goat hunting now, and just totally excited to have you guys on board. So to kick off our Goat Camp series, we have a couple of familiar faces to most people on the show tonight, but both these guys are Goat Alliance board members, and they're also extremely hardcore goat hunters, and they're pretty decent fellas. So I thought I'd invite them on tonight for a show. I mean, that's debatable depending who you talk to, but Marvin, Adam, welcome back, boys. Before we get going, I think it'd be prudent if the chair sitting up there in Kamloops area would give us a quick self-introduction and maybe a little background on the Goat Alliance. And I'd like to hear how it got started. I don't think I've ever heard that story. So we'll keep a brief summary, but I'll leave it to you, sir.
Yeah, so thanks guys for having us back. It was about, I think last January we were on for a goat session. Went over well. We had a good time. I think Adam had to miss a session there due to a little incident, but we got him on the second time, and we got a good uptick because of that. We had a lot of sign-ups here, so looking forward to the next few days. So just a little bit of history on the Goat Alliance, because I'm not sure if everybody knows kind of how it all started. Fairly grassroots. So a fellow by the name of Peter Munich is the fellow that actually kicked it off, and how he started it. He got, back in 2011, he got a goat draw in Montana, so he's out of Boston. He got a goat draw with 2 points, which is pretty rare in those parts. And he hunted a goat and got a goat on his first go. Then he went, in 2012, we went to Sheep Show. And we all know what Sheep Show is like, because a few of us have been there. He was amazed at the dollars that were raised for sheep. The one Montana tag, the governor's tag, went for $450,000 in 2012, and he was like, holy crap, this is impressive. He went back to Montana. He got connected with a biologist, Julie Cunningham, who many of us know. She's a rock star. She's been on different podcasts and with the Goat Alliance for quite a few years, helping us out as a biologist. So Peter connected with her to find out what's kind of exists for a group that's solely dedicated to mountain goats. And there wasn't any. There was academias, there was people that were very keen and did studies on goats, but there wasn't an organization looking at goats and fundraising and doing everything that we need to do due to the concerns with goat populations. So what spearheaded it off is Julie connected with Peter and said, there's actually an area that we've spotted some goats that had never existed before along the Montana and the Idaho border. So she basically pointed them in that direction. Pete got together with 2 others and they went in on a weekend with GPSs. So they took photos, GPS, and they found 60 goats. This is a herd that had never existed. So they'd migrated at some point into this area. So really that was the kind of the start of what we call citizen science, kind of boots on the ground, gathering data. So the biggest thing, if we get into it, is why do we exist? There's a lot of good reasons, but we don't have a lot of data. So fast forward a year and a half after Pete and his 2 buddies went in there, and they actually opened up that area and put 2 tags forward. And then it became a huntable area. There was a good, healthy population. And Pete actually went in on both hunts and harvested the 2 fellows that got the draws, harvested a couple of nice billies. So 2014 is when the Goat Alliance kind of became a charitable organization, and we took off. So last year was our 10th year, and that's kind of the grassroots of how it all started. And really, that's kind of the basis of the fundamentals of where we are today. A lot of it is supporting science and research. So we have a rock star group, our Science and Conservation Committee. We've got some of the big names that are on that group. Kevin Hurdy, a few of you've probably heard of him, Bill Jex, Kevin White up in Alaska. So we've got this group of experts, academics, as well as biologists from all of North America. They're the sort of the backbone of who we are as the Goat Alliance. So they help out assessing projects for funding, and they actually help with some of the research themselves. One of the things that we're working on this year, if you look at goat data and kind of a comprehensive review of data, the last set is 2009, where we have population data from all the jurisdictions. I think there's 13 states and provinces and territories that have goats. What we're working on now with one of our SCC members is compiling data again, getting a refresh of all the reports, studies, population data for all of North America, and we hope to have that done by this fall, because that's really the sort of the concerns. And a lot of our studies that are done, it's because there has been a concern with populations. I'd love to get into lots of projects. One I'm going to mention is the Car Ridge project. That's been going on in Alberta since 1989. So that's the longest standing annual goat research project in North America. And really that spearheaded as well due to a significant downturn in the goat population in Alberta in the 1980s. So there's been a lot of great research done, a lot of great information that's sort of been gleaned out of that study. That's another one that we as the Goat Alliance support. Other things that we support, of course, is the educational component, reaching out to the different jurisdictions to promote sex identification. So is that an Annie or a Billy? Because that's one of the big concerns, is the taking of nannies and what that does to a population over a few years' time. You know, goats are very susceptible to different factors, and their reproductive rates aren't as consistent and steady as a lot of game. They also breed a little bit later. So that's a big one. And for interest, I know Alaska just recently okayed mandatory training for all goat hunters in Alaska, in the state of Alaska. That's a huge win. So we'd like to kind of get that going throughout all jurisdictions to have mandatory testing. Not testing, but just a course even. So I know I was involved a couple years ago in the state of Colorado. They have about 200 tag holders a year. So I did a seminar there on identification as well as sort of hunting tactics. So just getting that kind of initiated in all the jurisdictions. I'm going to say this because I don't want to forget it. There has been in the last couple of years goat hunters that have actually harvested ewe sheep up in Alaska.
Really?
So that tells you that there's work to be done. We're not talking nannies versus billies. We're talking a goat versus a sheep. So that's of concern. So I just thought I'd throw that in there. Public engagement, I mentioned that, supporting citizen science. So that's the big one, right? Getting boots on the ground. We probably do more boots on the ground projects south of the border just because of the terrain in BC. We've done some in British Columbia, Alberta as well. But sort of the boots on the ground, just looking at the terrain and what's, accessible and where you can do decent goat counts. It's been a little bit harder in some of these jurisdictions, but we get involved with aerial surveys. We also do projects we're working on right now in the West Kootenays on collaring. So we had a collaring project. It started in March 2023. 8 or 9 more collars were deployed back last October it was. So tracking sort of mountain goat, looking at behaviors. They're very susceptible to what we're finding, the more studies that are done, to development, whether it be industrial type development like mining or even recreational. So we're talking snowmobiling, heli skiing, heli hiking, mountain biking. All of those things are having an impact on goats, and the stress they're finding. The Car Ridge study also indicated that stress induced into the goats has caused issues regarding reproduction. So that's actually lowered the rate of fertility in mountain goats, just the stress alone due to different activities happening. So that's sort of just that in a nutshell. Membership, we're at about 1,000 members and about 400 life members. Again, we're spread throughout North America. 149 members in BC, 123 in Montana, Colorado 74, Texas 62, good old Alaska 54, Colorado or California 45, Alberta 42, and then we keep going. We've got membership around the globe in Lebanon, Australia, pretty much every province and state we have membership. So we're very, we're very widespread. Even our board of directors, we have 8 right now, 4 are in Canada, 4 are in the US. So we're pretty even split that way. So if we're in a room together and there's a tussle, it's pretty close call.
Evenly matched.
Yeah.
There's a bias in there, I think.
Well, that's some awesome information there to unpack. I have a question. Are mountain goats threatened by any particular diseases like sheep are with moli and other things? Is there anything that's a concern?
There is concerns. Really, the main population where they've seen some impact on MOVI was in Nevada. So I have heard in the past about some MOVI even in Alaska, but it's not confirmed. But I know in Nevada there has been cases there. There are different diseases that come about. ORF is another one that's been seen in a lot of jurisdictions. I've seen photos from British Columbia. ORF is basically lesions around the mouth, the nose, and it actually has caused death, but if some have survived it as well. So it's pretty nasty looking. So there are different diseases that goats can contain. The biggest thing with goats and the populations in all areas are not doing all that well. Some are doing all right. Some of our studies in the US last year in Glacier and in certain areas were looking very healthy, and they've actually increased some of the hunting allotment. But in certain areas, it's definitely down. In certain areas in British Columbia that I've observed as well, they are down. So trying to figure out all the reasons for that. It's a multitude of different reasons, whether it be predation, whether it be disease, whether it be the impact due to activities, whether it be industrial or whether it even be recreational. But my observation is a bit about avalanches. Some studies up in Alaska, I think it was a 30%, 33% roughly of a population that was observed were wiped out due to avalanches alone. So that's a huge one. And the thing with that is that there's goats, because of certain activities, are getting pushed into areas that are more highly susceptible to avalanches. They're also getting pushed into areas where the feed isn't as the feed's not there. potentially with the climate change as well, is what we're finding is the alpines or the grasses are becoming reduced, and you're having your more your brush and your trees are moving up in elevation. So that reduces your high-end feed, as well as causes more, I guess, opportunities for predation in certain areas. In the south, where there's cougars, you get the same with bighorn sheep. Is that your cougars or your wolves or your wolverines? They have more. They can definitely do a closer stalk when they have more brush and trees kind of there to aid in their endeavors. And the other thing I didn't mention, of course, is the golden eagles, which have been known to take out the young as well, particularly the kids. Although some studies have shown that there's been very limited success on that, but from what I've heard, I think it's a combination of all that, but eagles do have an impact as well.
Wow. So it's not like there's one single thing threatening population or sustainability with goats. They got a lot of things lined up working against them.
They do, and when you think about sheep or elk or deer, so in those winter months when they come down, they're sort of in areas where it's plains, there's lots of feed. You don't see goats here. I see sheep in my neighborhood. They're coming down in the winter and the spring into pretty nice lush areas to feed still. The goats, they're not coming down to that kind of feed, right? So they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. I mean, just simply like certain areas, there's a lot of snow depth, right? On the coast in particular. I think Adam sees that. I saw that when I lived on the coast and hunt goats on the coast. You're into a lot of depth of snow. So that in itself, like after the rut, I don't find the goats are moving a lot. If there's 4, 5, 6 feet of snow, they are hunkered for a long time in one spot, and sometimes very limited feed. Or else they're on the top of the mountains where it's windswept as well, because that's where they're finding feed as well, much in the windswept, or else they're hunkered in the timber, just browsing off the branches.
Well, when you think about the terrain and the climates the goats live and survive in year round, like you said, in comparison to sheep and other animals other species that will migrate into wintering areas for feed. I mean, they must have just the most amazing, constitution and ability to survive. Just the top of the mountain with no food, very little food. Water comes from snow at that point, and just the ability to survive everything, the landslides. It's pretty incredible when you think about what they have up against them.
I mean, yeah, and we haven't even gotten into the anatomy, but if you look at a goat, I mean, they are a machine. When you look at the way the skeletal and the muscles are just formed, they are unbelievably muscular, and they're just, I mean, you look at just even how they navigate with their toes. I mean, they can just have a tiny little bit of a ledge, I mean, an inch, and they can navigate across a cliff face. I mean, it is amazing. And then their hide, of course, is, I mean, if you ever got a winter goat, there's a lot of hide, there's a lot of fat on a healthy one. But then they can they can kind of withstand those brutal temperatures, high winds on the top of a mountain, feeding on the grasses on the upper ridges in -40 or whatever temperatures you're at. Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. All right, cool. So here's what I'm thinking, Marvin. I think each night we're going to start off with a little bit of Goat Alliance business on each show. And so we'll circle back again on episode 2, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the projects and initiatives and stuff. So we'll come back to that. I think what we'll do now, we're going to do a quick giveaway for the registration prize. We have a real generous donation from Hilleberg. Everybody knows Hilleberg. If you're a goat hunter, you probably should know Hilleberg. If you're going to camp up there, you're going to want a hilly tent, more than likely. So we just want to throw a special shout out to them for throwing us some gear to give away. And Blake, you've pulled a name. Who's the winner for the registration prize?
Yeah, so the winner is Erica Putnam. So I'll
Okay.
just put it in the chat, but I'll message Erica and handle the shipping details.
Perfect. All right. Well, congratulations to Erica. All right. Well, let's turn it over to our other guest for a minute. I thought tonight would be kind of a fun idea to unpack and discuss the journey of a goat hunter from the very beginning to what you see today as far as accomplished goat hunters. And we're going to flip back and forth from both of you guys tonight. I know some of the beginning stories from Marvin, and I know if you go back to our previous goat camp series from last year, there's some cool stories on there. But we're going to start with Adam. Adam, like we said, last year, Adam got cut a little short. He had a little incident, had to miss an episode. So, Adam, why don't you give us a little background on yourself and maybe start off by telling us how you got into goat hunting?
Yeah, so I live in Southeast Alaska. Originally, I'm a flatlander from Kansas. Grew up hunting whitetails, turkey, big waterfowler actually. And I moved up here in my early 20s and met my wife, whose family's from the town I live in now. And as they say, the rest is history. And so I pretty much left this very flatlander style of hunting, and we used to do stupid stuff hunting waterfowl in national refuges and stuff in Kansas. Walk farther than anybody would go with their flat bottom boats or whatever. So I always really enjoyed doing hard things, type 2 fun, as you call it. And so naturally, I spent a few years up here and was like, okay, this is a lot more to bite off than I realized. You're like, well, there's no waterfowl. Well, there's no whitetails. Okay, what's next? And so naturally, black bears and goats in Southeast. And of course, there's browns around too, but black bears are like flies on shit here. So black bears and goats, and for me, it was more of a necessity. I needed to fill this void. There was nothing I was used to hunting in my immediate vicinity, and so I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna become a goat hunter. So naturally, the progression of, okay, what do I buy? What do I need? Okay, I'll start with this. And you learn the buy once, cry once mantra pretty quick. You buy this and it doesn't work. You buy that, it doesn't work. And I remember my first goat hunt. I had an umbrella stock pack with a scabbard and a Kafaru paratarp with an annex. And I had one trekking pole that I had borrowed off of a friend in town. And so I'm pitching this paratarp, and I'm using my rifle as one of the poles because I didn't have a trekking pole. Super safe. Unloaded, of course. But, it's just the things that you do out of necessity just to get outdoors. And, you go, I don't know how many trips I went on before I even got to pull the hook. So it was quite the journey for me. I think without diving and going down any big rabbit holes, the thing that I've learned the most is from the very beginning, for me, it was never about, mountain hunting is, it's easy if you can turn your brain off and let your body do the hard stuff. If you can get out of your own way, you can do a lot more than anybody would ever fathom. Like for instance, on my first sheep hunt, the sheep that's over my shoulder here, it started with, like 9 miles on a glacier. And by the end of it, we'd done almost 100 miles in the Chugach, which if you've ever been in the Chugach, it's stupid, but it was stupid out of necessity of being ignorant and not knowing and having nothing else other than willpower, So I guess to an aspiring mountain goat hunter, I would say that if you can stack the odds in your favor and have all the nice gear and this, that, and the other, that's nice. But really, if you've got willpower and in time, you can accomplish a lot.
Well, yeah, well said for sure. So a couple questions for you, Adam. How old were you when you decided mountain hunting was something you wanted to try?
I believe it was like 2021.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like you were 20 or 21 years old?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
20 or 21 years old. Yep. I believe 20 going on 21 probably.
Sure.
I'm
And then-
33 now, so I haven't been doing it a whole hell of a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big change from Kansas. Like, you're not in Kansas anymore, for sure, right?
Yeah, thankfully.
So were you lucky enough to have a mentor that helped you along with your journey up there?
Nope.
No.
For me, it was a lot of getting on forums. Fortunately, social media is a pretty powerful tool today. There's various forums out there. The Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance was a huge tool for me when it finally came about. I remember talking with Pete when they first were established, and it's like, how can we get something going in Alaska? And Alaska's always kind of been a difficult place to get like a heavy presence, because everybody's so spread apart. All the hardcore goat hunters live anywhere from a couple 100 miles to 1,200 miles apart. So just the sense of a community, it's hard to accomplish that. And then you get into the political side of it, and being able to fund specifically mountain goats in Alaska the way that the general fund in accepting donations is set up. It's a pretty intricate web to weave. So that's still something that we're struggling with, figuring out how to be involved in Alaska, but we have some good talks going, and positive light forward.
Yeah, really interesting. Yeah, when you look at the geography of Alaska, I mean, it's not like you can call up a pub night to have all the goat hunters get together.
No, but we
share
did
stories.
we did recently have one in Anchorage. It's just a pretty good central hub there in South Central,
Mhm.
with a great turnout.
Right on. So back to your first early hunts, what was the planning like? I mean, you're in a pretty overwhelming place in Skagway. You've got, I mean, it's like the coastal mountain version of British Columbia goat hunting, I'm sure, or maybe not, but I would suspect it is. How did your pre-hunt plans look as like new goat hunter with the Eberly stock pack and the tarp tent? Like, where are you going? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I remember early on. So I come from my old man was in the military, and so I come from kind of being raised in this from the very beginning. Whatever we were doing growing up, it was, where are you going, who are you with, and when are you coming back? And so growing up, I had that instilled in me. So I at least knew that it was good to let then would have been my girlfriend, now my wife, let her know, hey, this is where I'm going. This is when I think I'll be back, but we'll figure that out. I didn't have a DeLorme at the time, no satellite comms. So it was, he'll be back. This is where he's going from. And that was it. And so I did not grow up reading topographic maps at all. And so that for me was, I got maps in my hand. At that time, Google Earth was okay. And I pretty much would do some summer scouting, do some hikes once the snow melted. And I pretty much took, how I learned to read a topographic map was I took it to the top of the mountain and I sat in the spot where I was at, and then I started looking around. Thankfully now I'm sure there's plenty of YouTube tutorials out there, and I'm sure there was at the time, but I was too ignorant or stubborn to do that. But as far as planning was back then, it was, I think this is where there's some goats, and I'm gonna figure out how to get there and sort it out.
Wow, that's cool. So how many goat hunts did you go on before you managed to cut the tag then?
I was pretty fortunate. The first year I went up solo. I did most of my early hunting solo, and I actually sat on a pretty good billy that first year. I think I was within 300 yards or so, but he was in I would never have been able to retrieve him where he was. And then some nasty weather moved in, and I sat on him for another couple of days, and he moved around, but if he'd have fallen in the chute he was in, I didn't have the capability to retrieve him. So I ended up going home empty-handed, but very rejuvenated. And I remember that hunt. I actually believe it's on the Journal of Mountain Hunting's website somewhere in the archives. I'll have to find a link to that and put it on my Spike Camp page. But I remember the feeling of accomplishment of, you know, sitting on the animal that I was after with him in my sights, knowing that I did everything I could and the animal just didn't do something for me. And I feel like if you're a hunter and you can find that sense of accomplishment, like you've already done your part. You know, sometimes things just don't work out and the animal has to do something for you. So that for me was huge, just being able to go up, see how I liked spending time in bear country. Like I didn't grow up in bear country. So that was a whole other, you know, mental thing for me to get over, was learning that it's okay to sleep outside where there's bears.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because, you know, some people have an unrealistic fear of bears, which I think having a fear of bears is good. It's healthy. But you spend enough time outside, and if you stay out of their way, 90% of the time they want to stay out of yours too. And so that was just, you know, and I've had my share of run-ins. But that was something that I had a hard time getting over when I first started. So I think just getting outside and spending time, whether it was hunting or not, just getting in the mountains in June, July, August, you know, before season opens here, for me, that was huge to just get comfortable. And if you're fortunate enough to live somewhere you can do that scouting, that was huge for me too. Just getting in the mountains and spending time in mountain goat, like in their bedroom, you know, get in their bedroom, spend some time with them.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, you know, the first question someone's going to ask you if they're new to goat hunting, and we're gonna get into that a little further into the show, but it's always, you know, where do we find goats? How do you find goats? And you know, they're one of the few mountain species that seem to be in not exactly predictable places. I guess somewhat predictable, but they're in a lot of different areas. So you know, you got a lot of options on how you want to hunt them and where you want to hunt them. So on that, on your first harvest, so did you go back then the following year and try to target that same goat then? What was?
So actually that goat I actually ended up taking like 3 years later.
3 years later. Okay.
Yeah, but the following year I had a buddy that was deploying. He was stationed in Alaska. He was getting ready to deploy and go somewhere over there. And he hit me up and was like, do you have any interest in going to Kodiak? And I was like, well, I live in Southeast. I got goats in my backyard. Like I don't have to hop in a truck. I can grab my pack and walk out the back door and go hunt goats. But at the time you could shoot 2 goats, which you still can shoot 2 goats on Kodiak. And so I was like, yeah, let's go. So I ended up going to Kodiak with my buddy Blake. And we ended up shooting 3 goats in 9 days. And so I got my first goat on Kodiak Island, and that was a hell of a trip. And I learned a lot on that hunt because Blake so I got to kind of Tarantino this on you guys. So Blake and I grew up in Kansas together, and
okay.
He went military route, went and played football at Air Force. I played college baseball. Never were very close. We go our separate ways. Both ended up in Alaska about a decade later, touch base, and then just through. So what had happened was he was not going to have time that year to hunt with me, but we'd been trying to make things work. He ends up shooting a ram on day 1 of his sheep hunt, has a bunch of extra time. We make this last minute goat hunt work, and then I was fortunate enough to take my first billy. But what I was getting at was him and I had been chatting a little bit, but he wasn't really my mentor until we really had created a solid bond and a connection on that hunt. And I learned so much from him on that hunt because at that time he'd been in Alaska for almost 6 years and he had seen it and done it. And just being able to be on a hunt with someone and learn on the mountain is so much different than talking about it, right? Like being there and living the experience with somebody. And, you know, I think we should go this way. No, we need to go this way. Or I think we could get down the mountain that way. And when somebody's like, hey, if you found a spot up that's safe, you don't go down anywhere else. So like learning those, you know, those things. So to me, that was that next year. And being able to be on 3 goats in 9 days after not having harvested 1 was a pretty special, you know, week and a half there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah, I can totally relate. As mentioned earlier, and I know tomorrow night we've got a pretty fun episode. Marvin's going to be the host tomorrow night. He's going to interview Ed and I, and we're going to probably talk about my goat hunt. And I never specifically hunted goats before, but when in reference to the your statement there about the mentor and spending time with someone with that experience, it was like just getting hit in the face with cold water hunting with Ed. And it wasn't like we did a 10 or 12 day backpack hunt. We camped together and then day hunted for goats. But it was the hours on that mountain, up and down, in goats terrain, watching a goat in action, making the play, making the stalk. The recovery was where I was like, oh, like Ed says, don't walk there. I would have walked there. So I can relate, man. I hear exactly what you're saying. So, all right, well, we're going to come back to some stories. We got a whole week's worth of stories, but I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions from the early days. If you were looking at your gear, your pack, looking back now, what do you wish you may have had in that pack on that first trip that you now have in your pack today?
Quality food. Yep. I had so many Cliff Bars and ramen in the early days thinking, oh, I don't need to spend money on good food. Like,
yeah, no, this is it.
Hindsight, like, hey, this is your damn vacation. Enjoy your time on the mountain. Eat like a king, carry cheese and peppered salami. Bring some bourbon, have nice coffee. So now I definitely lean into the pleasantries, but I'm definitely an ounce weenie as well. So there's kind of a fine line to walk there. Like I like taking, good coffee, a nipper of bourbon that I try not to break out until somebody pulls the hook. But what I wish someone had told me early on about gear and buying things is like, you need quality boots, you need quality optics, and a shelter that's going to keep you alive. Everything else you can skimp on. As long as you have a rifle that shoots and quality optics, so you know what you're shooting at, you've got quality boots so that you don't get 10 miles back and they fall apart, or you've got blisters on your heels on day 3, which ruins a hunt. And then we all kind of put ourselves in bad situations at times in the mountains just due to the nature of the weather that happens there. And so I think having a quality shelter is pretty huge, or you just need to be a tough son of a bitch with a tarp. But I think the biggest things is early on, I thought I had to buy everything all at once. And I wish that I had just really put more thought on quality than quantity and just skimped with what I had. You can hunt in jeans. You don't have to have Kuiu or Sitka or First Light, any like whatever it is, But if you have good boots, the rest kind of take care of itself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and tough son of a bitch. Yes, someone on this call sleeps in garbage bags, or at least used to in the old days. We've heard these stories. So we're going to talk to him in a minute again. So last question, then we're going to flip back to Marvin for a similar set here. What do you wish wasn't in your pack on that first hunt? Got to be something. It's certainly. I'm sure the pack's lighter now. What did you take that you wish, like, God damn, why did I take that?
For me, it was a hatchet.
A hatchet? Because there's no trees up there? Is that what?
I was high enough on the mountain. I didn't need a damn hatchet. Yeah.
You could trim your nails with it or something. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We're gonna circle back, Marvin. We're gonna kind of ask a similar set of questions. So, how old were you when you started goat hunting, and what prompted you to get into it?
Well, it's a great question. I'm going to come from a different perspective than Adam, because I didn't grow up in a hunting family, but I would say the passion for mountain hunting and goats in particular came when I was about 4 or 5 years old. Because I didn't have a family that hunted, but I had an uncle that was a taxidermist, so I got to see some pretty cool stuff go through his house. He lived in Prince George at the time. But a book like this is the one here. Big Game Animals in North America. Good old Outdoor Life. Jack O'Connor. This book inspired me to hunt the 4 animals that I really had a passion since I was small. That was really goats, sheep, grizzly bears, and antelope, pronghorn. Those really are the four, and those really are the four that I still kind of hunt, although pronghorn I don't have here, so it's a little bit tricky. I have to hunt in Alberta. And then just, I looked at a lot of magazines. I've got reams of magazines in my office still. Outdoor Life, 1985, Sport Classics, 1990. I got magazines, 1960, Outdoor Life. I go back a ways.
Right on.
I wasn't born in 60, but I was definitely born in 85. So I go back where it's something I just wanted to do because of what I saw. I didn't have people that I knew really that hunted until I was about 8 or 9 years old. I mentioned this before. I was watching a slideshow. I was in someone's house and they did some fly-in sheep and goat hunts. And it's like, that's what I want to do. So I was probably 8 or 9 at that point, and it was just like, I couldn't get that out of my mind. Flying with a beaver float plane into some northern BC mountain range, it's still, to this day, when I do it, it's like, this is the ultimate dream I'm living. And we get to do it almost every year. Well, we can do it every year in BC. So I've been fortunate to hunt goats for 30 straight years. This is my 30th year. And
Wow.
I started at 28. So, I mean, I had a passion at 4 or 5. This is what I wanted to do, but I didn't get to do it till I was 28. So I've been pretty much 30 years straight. And Adam mentioned he did a lot of dumb things. I think that's a theme you're going to see, is that I did a lot of dumb things when I was a kid. I'd climb the highest. So we had all sorts of bets we would do. Who would climb the highest in a tree and put the flagging up? Well, I would climb the highest. Who could shimmy up the tree the farthest without a branches? I would do that. We would bet each other to go in the dark to this fort in the dark with no light when we were just, 10 or 11 years old. I grew up in a strict home, but we were kind of free-ranging kids when it came to the outdoors. Like, we could kind of do what we wanted to do in the outdoors. We were 10, 11 years old, sleeping way back in the bush. We had a tree fort, a raft, and I remember asking my parents, my brother was a year and a half older, and he was scared to ask mom and dad if we could go camp in or sleep in the bush. And they were like, yeah, like no questions asked. They didn't go check out the spot where we
That's
built this
awesome.
little tree fort without a roof. So, I think I was kind of training since I was young mentally to kind of endure the hell that mountain hunting and goat hunting in particular can put you through, right? I mean, a lot of hunts. I did a lot of 24-hour specials, which is 24-hour day hunts. Did a lot of those starting out. So that's kind of like the premise on how it all started, but I didn't actually get to start goat hunting until I moved to the coast and finished all my schooling and education. I went to Vancouver for schooling. I went to Ontario for schooling. So the time I settled in and actually had time and some money to buy a rifle, I was 28 years old.
Wow.
So a little bit of a late bloomer. We're going to have Caden, my kid, on Friday, and you're going to see another perspective from a kid that he saw goats come in from day one of his life, and that's kind of
Yeah.
all he knew. So it's a different perspective. But and if you want to get into the gear, it's a totally even different sort of. I mean, it's jeans, it's cotton t-shirts, it's cotton sweatshirts. It was hell. It
Mhm.
was nasty. And this is coast, so we're talking, it's a lot of rain, a lot of snow, and it was pretty tough going. So if you're talking about what kind of gear, I had 2 packs, so and I still have all my gear here. I mean, I've got it right in front of me here. Even the boots weren't so bad. These are the boots, Koflax.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I still have them. Actually, they're really good shape, the bottoms, because I had them resold, but I don't wear them anymore. Like, they were great. They were very warm. I thought they were like a really good boot to handle the mountain terrain, but you just can't get a feel for the rock. So it was, I think it was 1998. We got a nice Billy, and I remember it was like I was freaking out. I just couldn't get a real good feel for the rock because those boots are like a ski boot.
Mhm.
They're really clumsy, so you just can't really get a feel for where you're at. So yeah, that was kind of the end of those boots. But the rest, yeah, I had crappy gear. I mean, my pack was a $200 mountain equipment Serratus Super Guide that didn't fit me. So I thought for the first 10 years, I didn't get a good pack till I was 10 years deep into mountain hunting, and my back would just kill me. Like I'd come home and I couldn't, like, it was hard to walk. It was like my back was sore for the next week because the pack just didn't fit. Like it was way too big. So so it
Sure.
felt like I was always just like it was dragging my butt down, and like I just thought that was hunting. It's there's the big suck factor, and you just got to get used to it.
Hmm.
So
So
that, yeah, and
did you have a mentor when you took on your first goat hunts then, or mountain hunts?
I didn't have a field mentor. I generally had partners, but they got into hunting and mountain hunting and goats the same time I did. So we kind of like, let's do this goat thing. I'm living in the goat mecca, coastal BC. It's like that's what I've always wanted to do. I had a mentor who I worked with who he basically started hunting goats when he was 8, similar to Ed. I think probably the similar age. They both started when they were kids with their dads. So I kind of learned a lot, just in talking at the office with him, and he kind of told me a lot. Like he only shot mature billies. I didn't know that. I was a meat hunter, and my initial goat was a young billy. Then I took a nanny. Then we started to take more decent billies when I was a few years into it. But yeah, the first I was like, it was just a goat. It was going down, and we love goat meat to this day. It's kind of one of our staples.
It's amazing. I was I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, because I've heard both opinions on goat from people. Oh, it's good, and some say, oh, it's not good. But man, oh man, it's good. Like, if you think it's bad, you have not tried it, in my opinion. Like, you've done something wrong along the way. So.
There's only been a few that I've been on where it hasn't tasted very good in the rut, but most goats, even in the rut, have actually been pretty good. There's only I can count. He's pointing at one. Not so good.
That one. Mute. Your
Muted.
mute button.
Sorry, my kids are running around in the background. That one I couldn't get my dog to eat that billy fried in bacon grease.
Okay. What was the time of year?
November. He was rutted up hard.
Yeah.
I mean, when we cut him open, he smelled like a rotten spruce tree.
Yeah.
And
so,
yeah, it was hard.
So
I made salami out of it and we ate it, but
yeah. So I mean, I remember goat November 23rd, November 20th, November 15th, another one November 13th. Those are the 4 I think I can remember. I'm pretty sure I can count all the goats on one hand that didn't taste good, and there's 4 of them. I think those are the 4. So I generally hunt November 1 to 10 is kind of what I focus on for different reasons, but one is also I just don't want to risk that with the meat could not be very good. So yeah, generally we've been really fortunate.
That's like one in a couple dozen that I've been a part of, and that's the only one that's been bad. And I mean, in the rut, with what they're doing, it's typical.
Yeah, exactly. Duly noted, right? You think about what's happening in their life at that point. I mean, the same can be said for mule deer and whitetail. I had a similar situation. I grew up on grain-fed whitetail. Went back to Saskatchewan every year, and 2 years ago, I shot a young buck in Alberta, young whitetail buck in Alberta, and he was in the rut. And it was the first time in I don't even know how many 50 whitetail that I'd been a part of where it just was bad. It just didn't taste good. It was rough to eat. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on there, but yeah, the goat meat itself, it's unbelievable. I was just blown away. I still have a little bit left, so that'll be coming up.
I see a good question in the chat. I was like, do you guys have a favorite recipe from Trevor? I personally, I grind most of my goats. My wife and my kids love it for all sorts of things. So what I did, because my wife didn't grow up eating any sort of game. So what I did when I first started bringing stuff home was I would cut it with bacon instead of any kind of fat, because bacon is a familiar flavor to everybody. And so if I cut it with anything, I cut it with bacon, because it's super fatty. It adds a little bit of grease to the meat. And yeah, we use it for everything.
Nice.
That's what we do.
That's
I don't
awesome.
know what Marvin does.
It's a mix of everything. So a lot of some burger as well, but a lot of it's smokies. So we do a lot of smokies. Everybody loves those. I haven't had a single person come over and say they don't like the smokies. Some of the cuts, like a backstrap and the loins, of course, we're going to utilize those. What the last meal we made here was unbelievably good. So it was backstraps, but just cut into thin little slices, little squares. We marinated that overnight, teriyaki sauce, olive oil, some barbecue sauce, the good old Montreal steak spice, some onion. Then we cooked it in the marinade in the cast iron pan, just barely cooked though through, so it's not overcooked. That was just crazy. Put that on some noodles, and it's like I just couldn't get enough of it. It was unbelievable. So usually we do marinate the goat, but these thin slices, bang on the cast iron pan, it was just crazy good.
Yeah, that sounds wicked. While we're on that, Ryan's asking, what's the typical yield? I'm assuming he's talking meat yield deboned on a mature billy. What would you guess that to be?
I
mean, I've hauled a lot of goats off.
Well, it's kind of a loaded question, because it depends on the area, right? Like they do vary size to size. Like an interior, yeah, like coastal goats are typically larger than something you'll find interior. But Marvin, you could answer this a little better than I could.
I go, it's generally going to be 60.
Like
yeah, that's
60
just a good number. Like
deboned. Yeah,
that's deboned. Yeah, it's going to be in that range. It could be a little less, or it could be a little bit more. Often you're not getting 100% because your goats are going to generally take more than one shot, although some go down in one, but some go down in a few more. So sometimes you're going to have a bit of wastage on one of the shoulders, say. You're going to try to, break them down and put them down. Sometimes it goes through the shoulders. So, but generally your goats are going to have more meat than the sheep for sure. So,
throw in a wet cape. Close to 100
heavy.
pounds with bones in right there.
Yeah, I mean, I've only done one. We packed out the head, the cape, and the quarters, and yeah, it was heavy. It was real heavy. There was a lot there.
I was on a kill a few years ago, but he made a great shot and was kind of quartering away, snuck it in behind the left front shoulder and out kind of the brisket. There was no loss, and it was one of those, this is great, but this is terrible.
Yeah. Nice shot. Oh shit.
So one of the things, I'll answer your question, Chuck, is what I wouldn't pack in my pack anymore. So for quite a few years, we packed the full bones out in all the quarters, and that made it really brutal just to fit that in the pack properly. And we're going pretty deep, and if we get two goats, that's just a lot of extra weight you don't need to deal with. So that's another reason we probably killed ourselves. Like, we're just packing so much weight along with the hides, and it's usually late season goat hunting, so we're taking the hides usually. So yeah, debone that bad boy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just the cape alone, it's like, and yeah, I can imagine what a February goat is what that cape is gonna be like. It's gonna be ridiculous, like a bison cape. All right, Marvin. So tell us, what was your first, a quick version of your first goat hunt? Tell us how that went.
So I was fortunate to get a goat my first year, but again, I wasn't selective because I didn't know any better. I was just looking for a goat. And that's actually my first big game animal as well. So it was a goat.
Oh, wow.
So I went out September with a buddy. It was like September 23rd or 6th, if I recall. That's a lot of years ago. And it was it was wet snow that came down. So I think there was 6-8 inches of snow. I was pretty much socked in. We got to the top of the mountain along a ridge, but we couldn't see anything except there was actually a fresh set of tracks. So it was a 1-day hunt. It was pretty brutal. I remember running out of water. So we were onto like a knife ridge, and there was just I guess we could have melted. I don't even know if we had a stove for a 1-day hunt. But I remember just sipping out of a little crack in the rock, some water. I don't think we were down on food. I remember wiping out, no trekking poles. Trekking poles were for sissies. I'm just going to say it back then. That was for granola people, or if you're from Europe, that's kind of how we viewed it. So we didn't use poles for a few years. So, I mean, I'm back at that generation. It was really not, hunters didn't use poles. So you'd be on your ass a lot. I remember I wore glasses before I got contacts, so my glasses were flying all over the place. You're going to slide all their devil's clubs. I mean, it's what you want in a goat hunt, really. That's what you expect. Yeah. It's going to be nasty. So I might have went on a couple more, and then we got into November, went into a different area, and that's where it's one of my favorite valleys. I haven't been there for years, but I do want to go back and take Caden in there because we've killed some dandies, and because I took my first goat, good healthy population. So went in there, and that's where we were not that smart. Crossed the river, and it's cold. Like we stripped down. I stripped down. I think I crossed that river creek 3 times. Because we go up, stalk the goat, couldn't find it, go back down, cross over, find it again, cross back, go back up, can't find it, go back across. So that happened 3 times. It is nasty cold. Like that's one of the things too, is you got to stay warm. But if you're out for a 1-dayer, that's how we did it. It's these 24-hour specials. You just balls to the wall. You just dealt with it. You got wet, you were nasty, you felt horrible, but you loved it when you got home. So I got that was a young Billy. I was pretty proud of that accomplishment, just because it's a mountain goat. I've been dreaming about this. It was a small goat, it didn't matter. I mean, I got the cape done, I still have it to this day. But it was a pretty cool feeling. So that kind of and I told my wife, I only want 1 grizzly bear. I only want 1 goat. I only want 1 sheep. That was the biggest lie, because it's unbelievably. I mean, it's like my son says. I mean, it's a lifestyle, and it became a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I actually hunted goats pretty much every weekend all fall. That's what I did. I don't moose hunt, never really have moose hunted. I bear hunted a lot, so it was really like bear hunting, grizzly hunting, and tag teaming between whoever had tags for goats, whoever had tags for bears. That's what we're doing. And I was pretty relentless on my hunting. But again, it's 1-day hunts, and I learned a lot. Like if you're gonna be successful and be selective, you've got to allow more time. And if you want to smell the roses and enjoy the trip, like we would get up at 3-4 in the morning and then go, and then we'd come back after midnight. I mean, those are long days. It's hard to be selective on an animal when you're only giving yourself a day.
Yeah, no
so
doubt.
That's something I've really learned over the years, and just to enjoy the trips more, be more relaxed, and to just wait out the weather. You need time, because when you're hunting coastal, I do 10-day hunts now. You can bank on 5 days maybe being in the tent, but then you still got good 5 days hopefully to hunt. That's hopefully all you need for a goat. But yeah, it's just being more patient, just not just balls to the wall, go, because that's when bad things can happen, because you're not thinking, you're just like, you're redlining it the whole day.
Yeah.
And you got to be in pretty good shape. I mean, when you're young, you're in pretty good shape. You can kind of handle it, but the older you get, a person's not going to enjoy that kind of hunt. But that's what I did for years. I mean, I did an overnighter in 98, and I got a nice Billy, a 10-year-old. So that was a nice one. But after that, I don't know if I did an overnighter till 2008. So, I mean, I was 12 years in before I did a 5-day goat hunt.
Wow.
it was just all just pretty much 1 day, or well, they were 2-day hunts really, because they'd often carry over.
The garbage bag, the sleep in the garbage.
It's the garbage bag, and we literally would just hike all night and get back.
Yeah, but I mean that. I guess the point there is you lived right in the heart of goat country, and so that was doable. That's and same with Adam.
Yeah, you can do those short trips, whereas now, I mean, I'm going 12, 14 hours now to go back to those areas. So you
Sure.
to me, you're spending that kind of time and gas. You're not going to go for a 3-day hunt.
No,
Yeah,
not anymore.
I mean, I live in, like, I've done a couple hunts where I've walked from my door and not even gotten in a truck, and
wow, that's
like
cool.
that's one of my favorite hunts actually. But I think there's some serious validity into what Marvin's saying, is like, even if you live in goat country, like if you're going to be selective and take a big mature goat, like even if I have one scouted and I know about where he's supposed to be, like for it all to line up and happen in 24 hours and have weather and have, like, give yourself at least 5 to 7 days at a minimum.
Yeah. If
you want to, and it's hard to, like Marvin said, to smell the roses and enjoy it. Like, why else are we doing it? Like, if you're doing it just to kill something, like, go hunt black bears in the spring on a logging road. Like, if you want to really give a mountain goat hunt what it deserves, like, give it some time and enjoy it.
And it's so much the story and the adventure, and, like, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion, but it's like, the older I get, I'm not killing many goats anymore. Trust me. I mean, I'm taking guys out and taking my son and going with friends still, but I really don't need to kill another goat. But I love doing the videos and the photos and just the camaraderie of 10 days goat hunting with a bunch of good guys. You can't beat it. There's a lot of laughs.
Yep.
There's some highs and there's the lows, but that's all the bonding. I mean, I kind of like going through the lows, and I kind of like the suck factor a lot. Even, I didn't get into this, but I do a lot of training. I always have, because I've got some issues with my knee and no kneecap because I fell in a crevice in 91. So I don't have a lot of strength in one leg, so I make sure I train a lot. But just learning to train in ugly weather, like, I go when it's nice out, but I still like to go when it's super cold. Like, I used to cross country ski a lot, so I go when it's minus 18 Celsius, minus 20, because it's just what you want to get your body used to ugly conditions. Go when it's super windy, go when it's hailing. I went when it was 47 degrees Celsius when we broke the record in 2020 or 21 with heat. Like, it's not what some people thought it was stupid, but I just like to kind of challenge myself to kind of face adversity when I'm at home in my training. So I'm kind of like ready for whatever comes. And trust me, we've had some pretty ugly things happen out in the wilds, as far as weather and blowing a tent up and dealing with bear issues, kind of everything, right? Avalanches or rock slides, and blown out rivers, creeks where you can't really cross them again. Like, like, those things are going to come, but it's nice if you've actually prepared yourself mentally for some of that.
Yeah, I mean, you really bring up a lot of good points. I mean, first of all, training yourself. You're training yourself physically, and you're, more importantly, training yourself mentally to endure the bullshit that you're going to deal with in a goat hunt and on any mountain hunt, right? Like, and then your gear. It's a great time to make sure your boots are going to survive that kind of moisture all the time. If you're hiking in wet conditions, your rain gear. What's it like in the wind? What kind of layers should I be wearing when I'm packing this pack up the mountain in a rainstorm when it's minus 10 or whatever, right? Like, yeah, there's so many different ways to train and sort of live that lifestyle. So I have a question before I forget. And this can apply to both of you. So fast forward to today, Marvin, are you a granola eating European today? Based on
yes, I've seen it. I've seen it.
The checking polls?
I can't lie. I mean, I can't lie. So. Adam's been with me on a trip.
Yeah.
I bring my granola and my
And
poles.
I tried to sell him. I tried to sell him on a little more manly version of the granola, but he's not so sure about it.
So
No.
Yeah.
Oh, that's-
Here's an example. I had friends of similar thinking as me, kind of same generation, right? And I was on a
Yeah.
sheep hunt, and we were side hilling, and he was like, "You got to slow down. Like, I can't keep up with you." And I said, "You got to try a pole." So I gave him one of my poles, and it was like just change. He just had the confidence of he could move. But again, just having one pole is pretty good. That's all we started with. So it was a gradual transition. I went from 1 to 2 over a 2-year period, because you're not going to go full in with. So we went with 1. Then I went with 2, but then I had buddies that would have nothing. So it's like, take my pole, give it a go. And then they were surprised at it's the little things. I mean, studies have shown too, right? The amount, like it's 25% assistance as far as like using less energy. For me, it was like going down and
your
pounding my
legs,
knee.
your ankles. Yeah.
It's pounding my knees, which I don't have good knees. So it's like, holy man. And the slipping will kind of throw my knee out. So it's like, that stops me from slipping when I'm going down. Another thing that I've really kind of picked up, it's like having good soles. So I had one buddy that was slipping all the time on a goat hunt, and it's like, you can't be slipping like that, because eventually when you're goat hunting, sometimes there's not a very good landing. It's not always grass. Sometimes it's grass and then it's vertical. So it's okay, this is not good. You're slipping too much. Then I said, look, let me look at your heel or your soles. And sure enough, your soles were all rounded. So every 2 years, maybe 3 years, I get my boots resoled. So I want nice sharp edges, because the side hilling, it's critical that you feel confident in your gear, and your gear needs to be like working properly. So rounded soles, and you're coastal on the wet. I mean, you could be anywhere. You could be interior. If it's wet, you want to be able to dig those soles in a good heel. And
yeah, good stuff.
Thing.
So where do you get your boots resoled?
You have to ask that. I mean, I get them done in a few different places, but I ran into a problem last year, which Adam witnessed. There's only one type of glue you need to use, and it's got to be this German glue. The guy in Prince George uses it. I got to find out if the guy in Vernon uses it, because I don't think he does, because my soles came apart. And it sucks on a trip when your soles come apart. And when your partners bring glue, but all 4 glue sticks are solid, the crazy glue that they bring.
Yeah, it's last year's glue.
No, it was last year's glue or the year before's glue.
Oh yeah.
So then you got to renew every year. You got to renew.
Yeah.
So then you start going through zap straps, and it takes a few zap straps to kind of hold those soles in, but your zap straps start to break, and then it becomes a pain. So I think there's someone on the island. So I mean, there's these.
You got to ask for the German glue. That's the key.
I've got a photo of it. I'm gonna post that one day, because I think it's. I don't want to go through the glue issue again. And the fellow in PG in Prince George has been doing it for as long as I've been alive. He says he doesn't use any other glue. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Well, while we're on the topic of luxuries on the mountain, maybe you could tell us, because we got a lot of listeners that weren't on last year's episode or last year's goat camp, but tell us a little short story about your garbage bag history that you have, because that's pretty crazy about your days gone by.
Oh yeah, so I used to basically just have a main base camp. So I use Hillyberg. Gotta love Hillyberg. I have a couple Hillyberg tents. So I had I still have it. It's a 3-person, the Cadem 3. That really was, we'd basically use one tent, and that would be our base camp. But then we'd still like hike for, go and be gone for a few days. And we didn't pack any sort of tarp or any shelter. So I just used these large garbage bags, which one lines my pack, and then one will be if we need to put meat in or put a hide in or whatever. I found everything in the has to be multi-purpose. So having an extra bag or two. They're large, the large black construction, really durable.
Yeah.
I've used
bag.
that.
Yeah.
It's great. Like I've hunkered down in a massive like hailstorm or rainstorm event, and I put that whole bag over me and just hunker down, and I can still have my pack on. So it's good for that. But it's also good to actually, like, you could cuddle up in it, one person. So my buddy had one too, and you kind of like have a little crash for a few hours. And we had a candle, so we'd put a little candle that actually gave us a little bit of heat, and we'd just sleep in the garbage bag. So that was kind of standard issue for years until more recent. Then I got a little bit smarter. So I sort of changed my whole setup on how I camp and how we hunt. And now it's basically a one-person tent. Everyone has their own one-person tent. Or even for a while, I actually had just a tarp I would kind of bring, or the fly of a tent, instead of just the bag. Because I was finding the rest in the bag, you kind of sweat a little bit too because it can't breathe. So it wasn't the best, but it was better than nothing. Like it's a shelter.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just touch on that. The shelters today have come a long ways. Like it's crazy. So a little bit of a side tangent here. I picked up a couple of years ago. I picked up one of the Durston X-Mids. They're Dyneema 2-person shelter, and it's a trekking pole tent. It's single wall. I think, what does that thing weigh, Blake? It's less than 2 pounds. It's like 1.5 pounds. And what I'm going to do with that now, because it's so small and compact, I'm just going to throw that in my bag as like a survival overnight bivvy, because we're talking 22 ounces, and you've got your trekking poles with you. And then if you end up killing something in the, you got to sleep in a creek bed or something, you don't have to use your garbage bag. You can use that. But I mean, I'm going to imagine in those days you weren't trusting anything if it weighed 22 ounces, right? Like garbage bag probably weighs 12. Right. So
yeah, the garbage bag had dual purpose.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of purposes actually. So for sure. All right, a couple questions for you guys. What were the guns on your first goat hunts? What caliber? So either one of you can go first. Adam, what were you shooting back in those days?
It's actually the rifle I was just telling you about the other day.
Okay.
It was my first rifle, actually. So I bought that as a very poor out of college kid. I was a 338 Win Mag, Remington 700 XCR2. So that's synthetic barrel, nitride coated barrel. I shot 250 grain Remington Corlocks. That barrel it shoots Corlocks so well. I shoot Corlocks with that rifle to this day. I actually just dropped it into an MDT chassis, and I'm excited to breathe some life back into it, because since then I've kind of gone ultralight. I've got a pretty light 30-06 that I love. But my first rifle was 338 Win Mag. It kills everything stone cold. A lot of energy downrange.
Great caliber, man. Great caliber. Good for anything. Marvin's got something.
Oh, he's got it.
It's all wood, baby.
I didn't know we were doing show and tell.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is stock. There's nothing been modified on this. It's a 300 Win Mag, Model 70, 2-7 Redfield scope, glossy.
The old shiny gloss. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same
recoil pad.
Still punch holes.
Changed. And you know what's shocking with this thing? Like, you wouldn't believe how many mountain trips it's been on. Like, it's hunted a fair bit of grizz, sheep, goats. It actually looks pretty good still, that stock. I'm surprised. I think I sacrificed my body a bit to keep the wood intact.
So for how many years did you use a woodstock rifle, and did you ever see point of impact shift with the swelling of the wood?
Not that I noticed, but again, I only did day hunts. Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
See, like that's, like it's that I'm not out there for 5 days pounding rain and the rifle's wet the whole time. So I can't say I noticed any difference, because I'm only out for day trips for the most part. I mean, the sheep hunts I went on were longer duration, but I don't remember a lot of wet. I think I was fortunate.
Oh.
I used this for, I would say 7 years probably before I got a synthetic 270 Winchester. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
was a little,
remember in my infancy, I did a lot of Duncan Gilchrist reading, and anybody that loves mountain hunting, if you don't know Duncan Gilchrist, get on eBay and buy some of his books. They're expensive though. He talked a fair bit about that in his books from back in the day, about because he spent a lot of time in Southeast Alaska. He lived in Haines for a fair number of years. There was actually some of the people he ran around with, some of my wife's family was close with, so it was some cool overlap there for me in nostalgia. So going back and reading a lot of his books is pretty cool, because he talks about a fair amount of folks that I've know or have heard of stories of. But he did talk a lot about wood stock rifles in wet environments and the swelling of the wood and the point of impact shift. So something to think about in the modern day.
I mean, I think there is some mitigation that you can do as far as, get a gunsmith to do a good glass bedding job. That was typical, sealing the wood, but no matter what, humidity, moisture, the altitude, all that stuff plays havoc on wood. But yeah.
I mean, I don't remember when I was looking what there was even for synthetic. Like, it's kind of like most people had wood, and I just wanted a caliber that I could kill sheep, goat, grizzly, and the 300.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's how I didn't know a lot about rifles, but it's like, okay, what rifle will kind of do everything? A 30-06 would, but the 300's a step up. And it kind of, I was working with a guy, he was helping me survey, and he said, oh, my dad has one. So this was secondhand, $500 all in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was good to go.
Yeah, no doubt. Well,
and I didn't know much about bullet selection, so I mean, I was using some pretty cheap bullets. So I think I was using 150 grain. I can't remember the make of the bullet, but my first goat, there's a pretty good hole. I could put my head through that hole in the so
there you go.
So the expansion, it expanded. Really good expansion.
It did its job.
That I think it went down with one shot. I'm sure it was one shot if I recall. So.
Well, those of us that know, a few of us know, you're making a pretty significant upgrade in rifle system this year from your, I guess, as far as price point goes. So tell us about what you got coming. I know I happen to know intimately for a few good reasons, but what do you got coming?
So looking at a 7 SAUM, 20-inch barrel, proof barrel. Yeah, you probably know more than I do on all the details, Chuck. I'd have to look it up on my phone here. It's all pimped out. Just firming up the scope on it. I was going to get a swirl, but I was probably going to get the Zeiss now. The
V4.
Yeah, the V4. I think it's what 4 to 16.
4 to 16 by 44. Yeah.
44. Yeah, that's the one there. So. Yeah. Was having difficulty getting the swirl unless I went with the new one, which went up by $600 US, the Z5i Plus or something like that. So yeah, I'm looking at a pretty lightweight setup. So I'm pretty stoked because I actually don't have a really high end lightweight, but I thought you get to Chuck and I's age, you got to start thinking about a couple pounds here and there. Right?
Oh yeah.
You do actually. You start to think about that. And actually, this is an interesting point. A short barrel. So my mentor who I worked with, who I never hunted with, he used to give me his gear all the time. So he gave me his 20-inch Remington 308 short action. That was a beauty to pack with that 20-inch barrel. And so that's like, okay, I like the 20. I got a 20 on my 375 Ruger Alaskan, so I know what that's like. But to have that for goats, that's a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm kind of liking the lighter weight, and I'm not used to like turret system. So our friend Nolan lent me his Gunworks a couple years ago with the turret on it with the Leopold, and it was like, oh, this is something different. This is nice.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm pretty old school in what I've what I've kind of used for 30 years. So
You're gonna love the 7 Som. I shot one for several years, and yeah, that's a wonderful caliber, 20-inch barrel. Once you've packed a short barrel rifle through willows and buckbrush and deadfall, and yeah, if it's light too, like I don't know what your woodstock rifle weighs, but that's probably a 10-pound gun. We're pretty close, I would think.
yeah, it's getting up there.
You knock a couple pounds, yeah, take a couple pounds off. You either trade it for, like Adam said earlier, good food, maybe a little more bourbon, or just go lighter. Either way, it's a good choice. So, one of the things I wanted to do, guys, we're cruising on time as expected. We're at about, what are we at, like about an hour and a half or so, right?
Yeah, we got about half hour left.
Maybe what we should do, we should pause for a second and do a giveaway. You got some swag kicking around there, I think, Marvin, right?
Yeah, we could. Let me see where I got a duffel bag. Like I could do a duffel bag and throw in a shirt. Like I got.
Okay.
Depends on the person's size. I got like a t-shirt, sweatshirt, hoodie, and I think I got a bunch of other t-shirts in a box downstairs. I'm not sure the sizing, but how about the duffel bag, and I'll throw in a shirt depending on your size.
Okay, sounds good. Blake, you want to pull a name?
Yeah, I'm just drawing a number, so we'll just draw from whoever's in the crowd right now. So number 65, that is Roger Briscoe. Congrats, Roger. I'll message you and we'll coordinate that as well.
All right. Yeah,
awesome.
We'll just get his size and stuff too, and then we're good.
Okay, right on.
Yeah, we can do that. All right. So tonight we've got, I know there's a significant amount of folks that are have either not hunted mountain goats or are really new. We got a lot of comments as we were building up the promotions and stuff for the goat camp. So I'm gonna throw this over to you guys. If someone walks up to you at the Goat Alliance booth at a trade show and says, "Hey guys, I'm new to goat hunting. How do I get started?" Like what? And you can bounce back and forth. What are the first few things you guys are gonna say to them? I know probably the first one is join the Goat Alliance. That'd be a great place to start. That kind of goes without saying. But Adam, you fire away. What's your first piece of advice for these people?
Well, that's assuming that they either live somewhere they can hunt goats or they have a guided hunt queued up. I always go to footwear first. Don't buy boots a month before your hunt. Buy boots a year before your hunt. As soon as you plan a hunt, as soon as you think about hunting, before you think about hunting, have a pair of boots that you've put miles on. How your feet are going to react in the cold and the heat. Like I said earlier in the show, it's like if you can't go where the goats are and your feet and your boots fail you, there's no sense in even putting the time into being there. So I'd start with boots, and then from there, if you're going with a guide, talk to your guide, talk to the outfitter. The forums are great. There's a lot of good information on forums. There's also a lot of really bad information on forums. So sure. If you're booking with a guide or an outfitter, you've already put your money in your you believe that they're going to provide for a service for you. So listen to them, don't second guess what they tell you on forums. You see it happen a lot. And then people have a bad experience. Like if you're going to spend your hard earned money with somebody, listen to them, it's a good relationship that way. And if you're going on your own and you don't have a mentor, after you join the Goat Alliance, reach out to Marvin or I. We're happy to share our wisdom and our knowledge with you. Mm-hmm. Him and I both have done stupid things, so I'm happy to help other people from doing stupid things. But yeah, I start with boots, and if you've got a rifle that shoots good, go shoot it. Be comfortable. If you're going to bow hunt, whatever you're going to use to take an animal, just get real comfortable with it. Mm-hmm. Those would be my knee-jerk answers.
I would just add to that, and this applies obviously to every aspect of hunting. If you're going to practice with that rifle, especially goat hunting, awkward positions, awkward angles, uncomfortable positions, knees on rocks, all that stuff.
Jumping
Marvin,
jacks, push-ups before you shoot. You should shoot out of breath because it's gonna happen. A lot of times
Yeah.
it'll be a follow-up shot or whatever. But yeah, we used to do an exercise when I first started like that. I do jumping jacks, and then I do 25 push-ups, and I do like some up downs or whatever. Just get your heart rate going, and then try and get behind the rifle, and in 10 seconds make a shot and see how you are, and learn to do that. Because that, to me, being able to control your breathing when you can't see straight and make a shot at 100 yards, pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess on guns too, this is worth spending a couple minutes on. There's so much discussion on the internet these days on small calibers, heavy for caliber bullets with lightweight calibers killing moose. And there's two schools of thought. There's old school and there's new school and there's technology, and then there's people trying to do things with guns that are maybe it's a bit out of the limitation of the rifle. But I'm talking to two guys that have spent decades literally on the mountain hunting goats. What's your opinion on good calibers for goat hunters? And both of you, I'd like to hear what both opinions are. Like, what's the range of caliber? What do you like?
Go ahead, Mark.
Well, the 300 was my first rifle, of course, and I got the 375, the 270. I took the 6.5 I used. Now I'm getting the 7 SAUM. I would say, and you'll hear this a lot, I think you just want to take the rifle that you're the most competent in shooting. Goats are really tough though. Like goats are tough, but I think your shot, where you're going to place that shot is very important. So I will take my 270 over the 300 or the 375. I mean, we'll get into that Friday. The 375 came on the trip last fall, took a nice billy down. So that'll be for Friday's discussion. Because my son took that one.
You better be here Thursday.
Oh, it's Thursday. Friday's my birthday. I'm heading to PG. So
let's hope you're here Thursday.
Thursday. I just think it's the 338's great. That's what my buddy used. But I just find I'm going to want the rifle that I'm the most comfortable and competent in shooting. But the key is a good bullet too. So good bullet, good placement of that bullet. But I kind of like the 270, 6.5, 7. Everything in the 7 range. But
Adam, you're shooting a 338 and 30-06 for your 2, right? Those are the two main calibers, right?
Yeah, I also have I've got a 7.8 that I built for my kids that I'm coming to love. I haven't harvested a goat with that yet, but I think that might be next. For me, I think the answer on caliber, even 25-06 and above, I think, 6.5, all that stuff. I don't think that the caliber with a goat is necessarily as important as understanding the bullet you're shooting and how it performs at certain distances. If you need 1,600 feet of velocity to get your expansion that you need, and it falls off at 400 yards and whatever your caliber is, you need to know that you need to be targeting 400 yards and in. And so I think more important than your caliber, it's understanding your bullet selection and how it performs at different distances, and looking at velocities and how those bullets are designed and engineered to perform is more important than the caliber. And then, of course, like Marvin said, where you put that bullet, it certainly helps to have a little more oomph and energy downrange with the larger calibers. I can definitely say that the goats I've shot with my 338, it's been one shot and done if I put it in the right spot. A good high shoulder shot that toasts both lungs with the 338, 250 grain bullets, got a lot of energy smacking that goat with. But goats are resilient. I've seen a buddy of mine shot Billy, his first Billy, in the COVID year, and he put 4 rounds from a 30-06 into that thing at 200 yards. Some goats just soak up rounds.
They
You
do.
know, and even if you
Yeah.
even if you put them where you should, you know, they I don't know. Next to a Canada goose, they've got to be the next toughest thing
Oh
pound
my
for
God.
pound.
Exactly.
Anybody
Well,
that's hunted waterfowl knows. But
oh yeah.
yeah, pound for pound, a mountain goat. If they're moving, keep shooting.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we're hoping to do tomorrow night, Blake's got to check the technology side of things, but if we can, we're going to share. Ed was able to capture my shot on my goat on video. We're going to try and do it like a short little clip if it works. Yeah, I think I do have it posted on Spike Camp. But anyway, yeah, I think it was it was definitely a well placed shot, and it dumped him quick. But I think one of the questions I wanted to ask you guys to talk about a little bit was not just the shot placement on the body of the goat, but the placement of the goat in relation to where it's standing on the mountain, because they're famous for the death leap off a cliff or running and jumping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys talk a little bit about that, like what you've seen, good, bad, ugly, and what would you suggest for a goat hunter trying to make a decision?
I'm not old enough to have had any fall in a bad place yet, but Marvin might have a good story.
I got a few stories.
I figured you would.
I will say this, that I've retrieved every goat I've been on, but probably shouldn't have. And I've done a lot of solo retrievals because my partners they weren't there mentally, physically. I mean, some of them are just unbelievably difficult to retrieve. But it's the stubbornness in me. It's like, I got to try to do this, even though if it's a 6-hour retrieval, or the one we'll talk about probably with Caden, that was a 10-hour retrieval with my son, which is tough when he's a teenager. But he's pretty mentally tough. I've had them roll off and do the death kick. I had some friends last year. They had that situation. They didn't retrieve their goat, and it was a beautiful billy. It's a book billy. I saw the photos, the videos, and they never got it. And they're fairly young, new goat hunters, and it was a horrible experience to not be able to retrieve it. But they were a bit anxious. They had beautiful weather. They had 4 days or 5 days. They took it, I think, on the first day. Again, they were rushed. But yeah, they knew it's probably going to tumble and it doesn't look good. So I think that's the critical part is, and I've been the fortunate thing about not having pimped out rifles and scopes is that my ability to shoot far isn't there. Like for grizzlies, I had 200 yards, 300 was my max for goats, and I've done 340, and 400 was kind of my max for sheep. So I can kind of read the terrain better when you're closer. And I've had it where we were 360 yards from the goats, but there's 2 canyons that are impassable between us. You wouldn't know, you would know it if you had your maps and everything like that. But, if a person doesn't read the terrain really well, you're going to end up in a heap of trouble, or you're not going to get your goat. The goat's going to be in a heap of trouble, or you're going to be in a heap of trouble to retrieve that goat. So yeah, that's one of the key things is, in 1999, I'd mentioned this before, I got into a couple big goats. I mean, that one was taken the next year. It was 55. It scored. I didn't pull. I was with the conservation officer. We were hunting the same draw we had, so we teamed up together. And he's like, took us all day to get up the mountain. It was a February hunt, so 5 hours in crampons to get up the mountain. Brutal hunt, but we got on probably 150 yards from 2 monsters, and he's like, nope, I don't like where they're going to land if they go. So I didn't pull. So there's been lots of goats where I haven't pulled. I think that's the big thing, and I mean that goes for a lot of things. We didn't really get into even like the aging or the sex of a goat, but you just need some time to evaluate the goat, the location. And goats they're not going to go down instantly. They will at times, but I've been fooled, and I've had the goats kick themselves off a cliff, and then you're in a whole heap of trouble. And I've done those retrievals, and it's like if I can get out of here alive, I'm good. I don't need to goat hunt again.
Mm-hmm.
I end up goat hunting again once
Sure.
once
you
you
love
get
it.
through it. But it takes everything out of you, and you better have a good life insurance plan if you're going to be pushing the envelope. So it's good to have a partner with you to kind of evaluate that too, and that's why I've generally had somebody. For the most part, I've done some solo, but not a lot. It's just that second set of eyes and mind, because the mind can play some games on you out there, and
Mm-hmm.
probably more so when you're solo. It's a tough goat hunting solo. It's a tough thing. It's a tough thing with a partner. But just
Oh yeah,
mentally,
for sure. I was just going to say, the one thing I think that plays tricks, and I don't have anything to really validate this, but I think one thing that plays tricks on the hunter, especially a newer hunter, or maybe our new goat hunter, you get in a situation where you've got that billy, like that sea goat had at 150 yards, and you get excited. You see this on YouTube in some of these videos where mistakes are made. And it's like, drop the rifle, get ready, get set up, bang, make a shot. Oh, then you think about how you're going to get that animal. And I'll be honest, and we'll talk about that tomorrow night with Ed too. And also, just Marvin, just a note, I want to get into aging with you and Marvin. And Adam, are you joining tomorrow night too? Are you going to be on that show as well?
No, I'm going to miss tomorrow. I've running a youth wrestling program tomorrow night. I'll be back Thursday.
Well, I think we can touch on aging and sexing goats in both nights. I think it's good to I want to get opinions from all the crew that are on the goat camps. But yeah, I think, you can make a poor decision in the heat of the moment, right? When you're getting ready to go. And just doing our hunt with Ed last year, I was excited because I saw the billy that we were going to take. And I was asking questions, I'm like, can we get him? And I think we spent more time on the can we get him part than we did on it's a billy and is this a good shot? And that to me was like the epitome of patience from Ed, from the guy who's done this a lot. He's like, no, we got time. He's not going anywhere. Let's plan our extraction. And we sat there we watched him for, well, between the stalks, we probably were eyes on him for 4 hours by the time we made our shot. So yeah, good stuff. Good points there. One thing I wanted to ask, we got about 15 minutes left. I think Darren made mention of this on last year's goat camp. We were talking about the, goats have a tendency to soak up lead. We all know that. We've seen it. But they have a biological asset in their body that makes them a little bit tougher. And I can't remember where he was going with that. Do you remember, Blake? He was talking about, was it the muscle tissue or something that the goats just have they're just made up a little bit differently. Can you guys speak to that at all? Because I know they're certainly tougher than most animals.
Yeah, I know they're built tougher. And I know the muscle, the way that's interwoven, I'm just trying to think of, why are they that much tougher? Grizzly bear's pretty tough too.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
Yeah, they just kind of like keep going. They have that never give up. They're just built to like endure a lot of abuse. But yeah, I mean, I could look at that a little bit more. I'm not an expert on.
Yeah, Darren touched on something. We can circle back to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a great question here from Damien. He's basically saying, what kind of terrain are you targeting when you're coming up through the timber into the alpine feed? What kind of feed and browse features are you scouting for? And mountain face do you look for south slope? So I guess this could apply to e-scouting or just general, planning your route up and looking for goats. What are your comments there, guys?
If you know how to read a topographic map, if it looks like you don't belong, probably goats there. If it's real steep and nasty, it's probably a good spot. Now, all joking aside, a lot of like nice features are if there's escape terrain above and below, like any kind of hanging basins, hanging bowls where you can get in through a saddle, or you can side hill up and then, poke over. As far as south facing slopes, I have hunted a lot of coastal, so it really hasn't mattered. The goats are pretty, for me, in the terrain that I have experience hunting. If you're hunting coastal, the goats are just there, and they are where they are. Whether they're on this side or that side of the water, they're just where they are. A lot of times I've hunted around some pretty big glaciers. You'll find them on glacial moraines a lot. There's a lot of new growth on glacial moraines. You'll find a lot of new various plant flowers, especially in early season. So if you're hunting early, that's a good place to look. If you find glaciers and steep terrain and you're in somewhere that's got a healthy goat habitat, you're probably going to find goats around there. I don't know. Typically for me, I'm fortunate enough to hunt a population I'm very knowledgeable of now. So I've gotten past the looking for terrain, but to a new hunter, I would say more than anything, if you're looking for an area to hunt, I would find an area on a map that stacks the odds in your favor. So whether that's an area that has a saddle and you can string two different valleys together and you can hunt two different valleys, or any way you can stack the odds in your favor. So to me, it's just, okay, well, if I find goats here and I screw it up, I can pop over this saddle into this drainage and I can go access all this country too. So I think you just more need to look at the country that you're hunting and what's accessible and what's not. And then to circle back to where you harvest a goat is when you're looking at that map, you need to look at where you can and can't harvest a goat safely. So you shouldn't be hunting somewhere you can't retrieve it. So if you see somewhere that you shouldn't go, don't even go there.
Yeah.
And that's my long answer to
No,
a
that's
short question.
great. Yeah, no, that's great advice. And because they move, right? I mean, like you covered a lot of bases there. They might be in one spot in the morning and move around in the afternoon. What's your experience with that? Goats, are they nocturnal or do they bed down like a sheep at night?
They will bed down. Yeah. Yeah.
They do. Okay.
They'll,
Ronnie Dirksen, back to shooting, shot placement and stuff. What's optimal shot placement on a mountain goat?
Okay, Ronnie, I know Ronnie well. So the spine, the one goat that well, I've had a few, but the one that kind of dragged itself off a cliff, I went for the spine shot because I was pretty close. I think it was 70 yards. And I thought, this distance, go for the spine. I don't recommend the spine shot just because with that hair, it's sometimes hard to actually, I just miss because it's hard to judge where that spine is when you got 8 inches of hair, on the top of that, on the mane.
Sure.
So I'm more going for the lungs now, or I'll angle that. It's nice if it's angled away, right? So you go through the lung and maybe hit the far shoulder on the way out. So I'm typically going for the lungs, but yeah, the spine. Okay, I've done a really nice successful one where I was right above the goat, so kind of looking right down. I kind of had no choice but to spine him. So depends, but generally I wouldn't typically go for the spine, but yeah, there's just not the room for error there on the spine.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, make good points because, like I said, 8 inches of hair or more, depending on time of year. I mean, you could be sailing right over in a void there.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And that's usually what's happening. You're missing that spine.
Okay, Blake, we're running out of time, eh? Getting pretty close.
Yeah, you betcha.
We just
Probably
got
should start wrapping.
Okay, I got one question, one more. Marvin, I guess both of you guys you've killed sheep too, Adam. So if you're looking at trophy care in the field, is there a significant difference in how you would handle a mountain goat versus a sheep? I mean, obviously, if you're hunting sheep or goats early, then you got to be concerned. But what about like cape care, salting the hide, blood in the coat? How does that work with a goat? Any advice
Blood,
there?
the blood won't really matter because it's all going to get bleached. Whereas a sheep, unless you're doing a dull sheep, but stones, like we got to wash that out pretty darn quick is what I do.
Yep.
But yeah, I take 5 pounds of salt for life-size sheep or life-size goat. 5 pounds is pretty good. If you're just doing a shoulder, you're probably good with 2.5 pounds.
Okay.
I don't typically bring salt when I'm late season because it's cooler and I'm coming down. So if it's after, into September, mid-September, I generally won't deal with salt. But August, I'd be bringing salt, just especially if you're staying up for a while and you're going for more than one goat. Yeah, I'm pretty fussy on all that. So, but usually goat hunters are coming back quicker than the goat hunt or sheep. You're on a pretty long duration hunt, but I don't know. I'm just pretty fussy. I've learned to do all years ago, right? Learning to split everything and turn the ears, eyes. It's a good skill to have.
Yeah, practice on your mule deer. Practice on anything you get your hands on.
If you know, I went and worked with a taxidermist for a while, so that was the best thing. And the best is to do it, not just watch somebody. You can watch somebody and still not kind of figure it out. You just watch somebody and then do it with that person right away. And like I enjoy it. I find I love all aspects of hunting, including the skinning
After
and
the
caping
fact.
and fleshing. Yeah, I kind of like all that. But it takes time too, right? It takes takes me a day if I'm going to turn everything and do a hoofs, and it's a big endeavor, and people are shocked at like what's required. It takes time.
Taxidermists are happy for the help, and they'll take free help. So if you want to go help them in the spring when they're taking in bears and stuff, you can learn all that.
Yeah,
you
that's
just
the
find
time.
a taxidermist close to you and reach out to them. If you don't know, most of them are happy to teach you because it's free labor for them, and you get a free skill. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Hey, on that note, have you guys have you done any research or heard of this velvet antler technology hide lock spray out of the States? There's a reason I ask is one of our buddies, Paul Chambers from Wild Sheep Alberta. He's on the board there. He's a big sheep hunter, and he put me onto that stuff. His taxidermist recommends it, and it's a concentrate that comes in a spray bottle. So we'll put a link up with that in the notes, but it's Velvet Antler Technologies out of the States. It's called Hide Lock, and it comes in like a spray bottle. And it's the taxidermists are using it in their shops. I don't know. I'm not sponsored. I'm not promoting it, but I think it's something probably less than 5 pounds, I would think, for a bottle of that. And from what Paul's saying, he's not packing salt on the mountain anymore. He's using that stuff. So I guess the danger in that is if you puncture it, you puncture the bottle in your pack and you lose the liquid, but might be something to think about, something to try. So, all right. Well, let's do one more giveaway, Blake. We've got a set of trekking poles from Brad Brooks at Argali. Gave me a set of poles at the Wild Sheep Show a few weeks ago. And special thanks and shout out to Argali for that. So let's pull a name and we'll get those off to somebody.
Yep. So the winner is Brian Broussard, I think is the last name there, number 16 down the list. So congrats, Brian. I will message you as well after the show here.
Right on. All right. Well, we're running out of time, boys. Just want to thank you both. This has been a blast. A lot of good stuff in this episode, and we've got 2 more shows. Thanks to the Spike Camp members who tuned in tonight. Tomorrow night's going to be an interesting night. It's going to be a little weird for me. Marvin is going to be hosting the show. Blake's going to be producing and helping out, and Marvin's going to interview Ed Thompson, mostly Ed. My story's pretty short and it's pretty boring, and I'm the rookie. But Ed, for those that don't know, Eddie's lifelong goat hunter since he was 8 years old. He's got a ton of stories. So we're going to pull some stories from the Ed Thompson goat hunting vault. And I don't know what else you've got planned, Marvin, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow. So
it's all going to be good. Looking forward to it.
Don't show your cards.
Yeah, no, I'm waiting for it, man. I'm a little worried, but I shouldn't be. But that's all good. Anyway, thanks everybody. I bet.